Hi everyone, I'm showing you insulin syringes for Botox, Xeomin, and Dysport injections. I don't use Daxxify or Jeuveau, so if you're using those products, then I'm not sure about the units. So I'm going to talk about Botox, Xeomin, and Dysport. So if you're a beginner and you want to learn insulin syringes, I'm going to show you 4 different types of insulin syringes that I've used. I'm also going to show you 1cc syringes that you can also use if you have those available. And that's how I learned when I was first starting injections about 10 years ago. So I'm going to talk about the 0.3 ml insulin syringe. So this is an easy touch syringe. I'll show you the box. It's a 31 gauge 5/16. And I use this for most of my injections. So this is how I dilute or reconstitute my Botox. So I do 2.5 cc reconstitution for the forehead and for around the eyes, and for the masseters, platysma, and Nefertiti. I will use a 1 cc dilution of Botox for my glabella and for lower face injections. I also use 2.5 for the upper lip for a lip flip and the gummy smell also. So I use this for the forehead, for the glabella, for around the eyes, and for lower face. The only place I don't use this is if I need more than 12 units in the insulin syringe. Why? Because I use a 2.5 cc dilution for Botox or Xeomin, and you can only fit 12 units in here. So if an area needs more than 12 units, then I will use a different syringe, and I'll show you what that one is. So when I'm doing let's say for example, if I'm doing a forehead, 12 units, I will use this. If I'm doing the glabella and I do a 1 cc dilution because I don't want as much spread to get it into the frontalis muscle, I will use this one. And at a 1 cc dilution, this holds 30 units because it's 1 unit per black line on here. Okay, so the one that I use next, most often after that one, is a 0.5 ml. This holds 50 units. And by the way, these are all 31 gauge syringes, except I'll show you the last one that I use for the masseters. So this is a 31 gauge 0.5 ml, holds 50 units. I will use this one if I need more than 12 units in the syringe. So I will use this for a forehead that needs more than 12 units. I will use it for the crow's feet that needs more than 12 units. So this one I use after the 0.3 as far as how often. Then you have your Comfortox, 100 units. This is a 1 ml. I rarely use this one. The only time I use this one is if I'm doing hyperhidrosis for the palms and the underarms. I will use this one if I have a male patient that needs a lot of units, that needs more than 20 units in here. So I don't use this one as much, but it is one that I keep on hand. So after the 0.5 ml, I like to use another 0.5 ml, but this is different because it's 29 gauge and it is a longer needle. It's a 1/2 inch. So I like this for a really thick glabella. I like this for the masseters that's going deeper onto bone. So I will keep this on hand if I have someone with a really, really thick glabella muscle. So then after that, this is how I started. This is where I learned. I learned off of a Luerlock syringe. I don't have them, but I learned with a Normject syringe. And Normject syringes kind of look like this with the plunger, and they have, it's like green inside, the plunger's green. So if you're using these, it's completely fine. You just need to know your unit counts. And the Inject app does not have an option to select these syringes. So if you're using a 2.5 cc dilution with Botox and Xeomin, each 0.1 is 4 units. So this holds 40 units of Botox or Xeomin, and the same with this one. The only difference is this one's a Luerlock, and this one's a slip. I like to use the Luerlock. I'd recommend these ones because it doesn't cause the needle to fall off. I have had times when I've injected it and the 30 gauge or 32 gauge just pops off of the syringe with too much pressure, or when you're in a really thick muscle. So when you're using these ones, you need to make sure that you're using an 18 gauge or 20 gauge 1/2 inch to draw it up out of the vial, and then you have to switch your needle to either a 30 gauge 1/2 inch, or I like the 32 gauge 1/2 inch. So there's different needles that you can put on. So those are the last two that we have on hand. I don't use these ones anymore. I feel like there's more waste with these ones. There's not as much waste with the insulin syringes, and that's why a lot of us like to use them. Another reason for using the insulin syringes, since I switched over to insulin syringes it's been probably about 5 or 6 years now, I find that patients don't bruise as much anymore with the insulin syringes because they're meant for one-time use. They're meant for a patient has diabetes to self-inject, and they rarely cause bruising. So the 29 gauge more so often, but the 30 gauge or 31 gauge, really low incidence of bruising. And I feel like they are very comfortable for the patient too. So with the 1cc and you're putting on like a 31 gauge or a 32 gauge half-inch needle, the patients tend to not like that as much. They feel it a little bit more than the insulin syringe. So that's the end of my video. If you guys have any more questions, please reach out to me, leave a comment, or email me at info@nursemarissa.com.